Today we're going to be scoping out at our local parking lot for a car in need of a design flip. I'll be hunting down a vehicle, snapping some photos, and using some creativity to modify and or redesign these vehicles into something that is super cool. This is Parking Lot Flip. Welcome everyone to the second parking lot flip. Today I'm trying to accomplish this within 30 minutes. I think this Cadillac here took me about 26 minutes to pump out an idea. The idea behind this is to just generate quickly a gesture sketch, a rough idea, so that you can, come up with a large variety of ideas quickly if, say, you were working on modifying your car like this. So it's going to be pretty dirty, not super detail oriented, but just accomplishing all the things I want to accomplish with this Cadillac here. This was a pearlized paint Cadillac out in the parking lot that I saw. Thought it'd be pretty cool to take a little bit of inspiration from Art Deco vehicles, and pair those two American kind of themes together. Art Deco style originated in France back in the 30s, I believe, or the late 20s, and it's generally characterized by repeated patterns and shapes, mainly geometric patterns and shapes, as well as things like imposing structures. So you'll see buildings like the Chrysler Building or the Empire State Building, very imposing. They're meant to broadcast the abilities of the human race, and you can see this in cars back in the day too. There was a lot of cars taking on Art Deco themes back in the 30s and 40s. Chrysler Airflow is one that comes to mind, where there's this long hood, there's stripes of chrome, repeated geometric shapes, and streamlining also was sort of hand in hand with that at the time. So I'm going to take a few of those themes and try to incorporate those into kind of an old school Cadillac style. I felt like this Cadillac from the art and science era really would be a good couple with that. So you can see that I've started off with breaking this down into two different kind of areas with that two-tone paint. That's more of like a 1950s theme. Back in car design in the 50s, that was pretty common, but you see it in the Art Deco era as well. And of course have to add, areas of chrome just to broadcast that split in there. I've lowered the vehicle. You'll see later on me trying to incorporate some of those imposing themes within the grille, repeated geometric shapes, and some of the things that are happening here. But this two-tone split, I think, is pretty cool because it's starting to thin up visually that body side, make it look a little bit sleeker and thinner, which I think is pretty cool in a vehicle like this that's maybe a little bit on the chunky side. This grille, I feel like, the stock grille is very much Art Deco inspired. I don't know what era this Cadillac is. I would guess somewhere in the mid 2000s or maybe late 2000s. But you see it in those repeated triangles, that kind of crate grille, very, very Art Deco. I want to play that up a little bit and almost turn it into one of those Art Deco structures. Let's just carry down this entire theme of repeated patterns and really make this grille super imposing. You see this back in Cadillacs back in the day too. They're just giant, super tall vertical grilles that really give off this really high sense of presence. So I'm going to Photoshop that in a little bit. It's going to require a little bit of paint work and just brushing over the license plate and filling in some of that pattern. But I think this is going to turn into kind of a cool defining element of this design here. Just have everything kind of stem from the front and radiate out. This will definitely make it look taller and more imposing, but also if we're stemming everything out from there, including the trim and the two-tone paint, that'll visually lengthen the design a little bit too, so it doesn't look overly vertical. You can see me starting to fill in with, I believe this was just a hard paintbrush, going in there and eye picking, using the eye picker tool to pick out some of those colors, and then filling them in the gaps where the license plate was and that repeated logo is, just to make it look a little bit more clean. I think this era of Cadillac is pretty interesting, and at the time it was pretty daring because it was coming out of a lot of very organic shaped vehicles. So this is cool to see. At least I remember as a kid when this era of Cadillac came out, it was really cool to see just how crazy different these vehicles looked. I mean, they looked really youthful for the time, coming out of an era where Cadillacs and Mercurys and Oldsmobiles were pretty much known as grandpa vehicles. So I think that this era was pretty cool. I think they've toned it down quite a bit in the modern era. We have a lot more Cadillacs that are softened up a little bit and toned down, but you can see me trying to define some of these characteristics like the repeated geometric shapes now with that chrome flowing through into the hood. This gives it a little bit of that repeated look and flows through into the grille. Cars of the 30s, at least luxury cars of the 30s, had these really, really extreme proportions. So I'm trying to get that a little bit with this chopped hood here, or chopped roof. We're going to lower it a few inches and just make it look like this really almost mob vehicle from the 30s. And I'll go in there and warp that perspective a little bit. It looks a little bit off right now, but we're going to change that up with the liquefy tool in the future. And I'm just thinking through what to do here. Certain themes and elements that I can maybe clean up and make look a little bit more real. So you can see the chrome. I'm starting to paint in some of the reflections that you might see in a reflective material like that. Basing that just technique wise on the reflections that you see in the body side. So I'm making sure that it really looks like it fits this vehicle, and then giving it a little bit of a place, so you can tell that this is a material that's been added. Just technique wise, this is going to make it look a little bit more real. This thing is starting to look pretty old school for sure. I'm going to paint in the top so it matches that two-tone paint as well. I think that'll visually kind of carry the glass through the entire roof a little bit more. I think this makes it look a little bit lighter and a little bit more traditional, and a little bit more of that inspiration that I'm trying to incorporate from the 30s era. And tinted windows, of course, for the privacy of a luxury vehicle like this, I think was going to look really good. So just throwing in some black with a hard brush, and then we're going to turn that on I think a multiply layer with a low opacity. Clean up some of these things that carried over from the roof. And flipping the canvas always helps too, to just check perspective and how your vehicle is reading correctly. This works with product design too. If you're not sure what looks off, sometimes flipping and rotating the canvas really helps you to figure out what is looking wrong. It just kind of tricks your brain into looking at something a little bit differently. I'm going to go in and add a little bit of contrast just for a little bit of dramaticness here. Threw on the white on an overlay layer and the black on a multiply layer, which was low opacity, and I think that looks pretty cool. And as always, you have to sign your work, make sure people know who did it, and give yourself the credit there. So what do you think about this Cadillac? Here's where we started and here's where we ended up. Definitely a bit different. There were some perspective tweaks that I performed here, so maybe a little bit of cheating. But anyway, that is the second parking lot flip. If you haven't watched the first one, we turn a Ford Fiesta into a rally car, and that one was super fun. Go check it out. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. Helps me grow the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.